right, guys, what's going on? Welcome to Puck Nation Podcast. We're the three buddies here, me, Mike, and Yanni. We all talk about hockey, because that's what we love. Mike, I'm not even going to go there. Your team lost again. I know you're not here with the Edmonton Oilers, stuff behind you. You lost again, bro. That's 0 for 2. The other guys is 2 for 3. We'll talk about all that. We'll talk about, your goalie and everything else next time, okay? Because I'm excited now today because
we have a special guest.
We have a special guest. Yeah. We have a special guest. Honest to God, I remember seeing this guy when I was a kid. I'm gonna be aging myself, Yanni, okay? Because you're just a punk. This guy's like the ultimate authority on NHL history and trivia, and I'm gonna stump him tonight. I swear to Christ, I'm gonna stump him. Or Yanni, what did I say? I'm gonna eat a hat.
We're doing this again. You still didn't eat the one for Joanne.
Okay,
Come
enough
on,
for
man.
this. Just bring him on. Mr. Liam Maguire is here with us tonight. Liam, thank you so much for doing this. How are you? Look, his shirt is dirty. He got a spot on his shirt. Wash it.
Go.
There you go. I see we're all kind of. Oh yeah, I see behind you. I see you behind you. We're all representing. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for doing this. Listen, right off the bat, I need to ask you, first of all, are you okay? Because I know you went through that storm. Mike went through the same storm. You guys safe? Both of you? You good?
We got pounded here a couple hours ago, and it's dark again. But I don't think if there is going to be anything, it won't be as severe as it was. And yes, we're all okay here. But it was a good one. It was a good one.
Mike went through it too. Mike, you're good, right? You're safe. You're good. All good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, we can do this. What's up with Liam Maguire, man? What's new? What's going on?
You know what? Last couple of winters, I should say, it's been pretty good. I got hired by a company out of New Brunswick, St. John, New Brunswick, called Legends of Hockey, run by a man who's become a very good friend of mine, Steve Walton. And we go on these tours with usually up to as many as 10 NHL alumni guys, 9 of whom will play in these charity games. And Chris Nyland is usually the coach. And I do the microphone work. So it's these tours last usually anywhere from 4 or 5 or upwards in some cases to 10 days. We've gone from Newfoundland to Alaska and all points in between. And it's been really, really exciting the last couple of winters. I, of course, still do a lot of speaking around the Ottawa area, and I've been kicking around a webcast myself with my buddy Chris Hawes. We have one called Offside with Hawes and Maguire, just finishing up year 2 of it, and having some fun with that, talking hockey and working on my screenplay when I can, trying to get that last book I wrote. Of the 4 I've written, the last one was a life story on the most violent athlete in the history of sports, Goldie Goldthorpe, who was the impetus for the character Ogie Oglethorpe in Slapshot, as most people know. I wrote his life story in 2019, and I got it in print. Now I want to get it on the big screen. So that's a backdoor project as well.
Wow.
But other than that, man, just drinking beer, watching hockey, and loving the playoffs. The last few years have been outstanding, and hoping for more great stuff down the road.
That's incredible. What did you think of these playoffs? What did you think of the finals? The Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. Mike's a big Edmonton
Panthers are beasts. Like that's impressive stuff. I know it's very identical to what Tampa did, albeit with some subtle differences, but 3 straight finals nonetheless, and 2 cups in a row. So that much is similar, and it's just the way they've done it. This Edmonton team, notwithstanding missing Hyman and Nugent Hopkins playing hurt, they were right there. I think they were full measure for the lead, and then the comeback in Game 4 was just incredible, and looked like maybe we were poised for minimally a repeat of last year, a 7-gamer. Probably would have got that had Hyman played, but whether they would have got the win or not, probably not. This Florida team are just unreal. If they find a way to get those 3 FAs signed, like, you can almost pencil them in again, probably. It is scary. They can play it any way you want. Amazing. Any way you want. Bennett said it at the parade. No apologies. Yeah. And if they get him and Ekblad and Marchand back, look out. But I love watching greatness. Yeah, I'm a Habs fan, but everyone has a team. But I just admire how teams do it because, like Brad Marchand said, you don't like it, come take it from us. And so that's the way it's got to be. And eventually someone will. But that's a hell of a run and a hell of a team, and they've been something to watch. They really have.
3 finals in a row. You got to give it to them. I mean, we were talking about it off air. You got to give it to them, Mike. I know you're a big Edmonton. Yeah. Mike's been an Edmonton fan since I've known him since he was a kid. And Mike, I'm sorry, bro, but you know when you're tossing goalies around like that, and you guys are hurt and whatever, forget it, man. These guys, they're animals. You saw the way they play. You need balls, man. You need balls to play.
It's also the caliber of goalie. You couldn't
compare
you got Bob
Skinner with
Bob.
Skinner. Just forget it, man.
It's 2 different leagues altogether for those guys.
You know, the interesting thing about that, of course, is both him and Pickard played pretty solid to get him into the final, right? I mean, it's a 32-team league, and you're 1 of 2 teams for the second year in a row. It's not like it's chump change. It's just you're getting beat by, let's just see.
A powerhouse. Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Yeah, let's just see how it plays out. I don't know if it calls for wholesale changes. You just have to tinker somewhat, obviously, and you look at where the shortcomings were and what you can address, and you've got some stuff to take care of contractually, and as does Florida, obviously, as we just discussed. So I think Edmonton's not that far away. I mean, out of max 14 games, you played 13 against a team that a lot of people are saying is a modern-day dynasty. So it's not like Edmonton is chump change here, nor Skinner or Pickard. It's just they came up short in the big games, and guess what? Take a number. How many other teams did in their playoff runs?
So, exactly.
That's true.
Totally agree with that. Listen, man, you got there 2 times in a row with arguably the best players in the league. So you know what I mean?
I feel bad for Corey Perry personally. But
yeah. Thank God for 07.
Yeah, at least he got one.
For real, at least he got one.
Insane.
Yeah. Liam, I gotta ask you. Obviously, you're a stat guy. You're the historian, whatever. You got into this pretty young, right? How the hell does a kid get into this? How do you do it? Like I was telling Yanni off air, I'm like, this is like algebra when I was in school, and I'm like, get out of here, man. I don't fucking remember numbers. I'm done. How do you get into this? How does it? I mean, don't you want to body check, whatever? No, I want to know stats. How does that happen?
Same way all kids did. It started with the hockey cards. I loved the sport. I was one of those kids that slept in my equipment. I had 6 a.m. practices the next day. My dad would drive me just like millions of other Canadians going back a century and change. I was that same way and kept playing as high as I possibly could, as much as I could, got into the men's leagues and everything. But long before that, when I certainly realized early on the NHL wasn't going to be part of my future as a player, I just became consumed with the history of the game at a very early age. And I had some like-minded friends who were equally interested in it. So at the ages of 12, 13, 14, those are very formative years. And I started going to the Montreal Forum at 15, and things just found a way. You know, I got on the radio as a call-in guest starting in 79, and then I got asked to come in studio where I got paid for the first time on May 21st, 81. I got paid $75 to do 2 hours of trivia questions where people phoned in and tried to stump me. So that's 44 years ago, fellas. 44 years. Wow. It's a long time, man. Long time.
You got to agree. I mean, that's not something that every kid does. I mean, you know, stats. I mean, to me, like I said, I compared it to algebra. I'm like, are you kidding me? I remember I got in trouble because you remember the old calculators we used to have? Remember the old calculators? Yeah. My teacher was showing something on the board, and I stood up and I tried to change the channel like this. And I used it as a remote control. And he turned to me, he's like, what are you doing, man? Sit down. I said, I go, you're stoning me, man. Like, I'm changing the channel. You're boring the shit out of me. Stop. So
I bet you guys, even you guys, or if not you guys, good friends of yours, because you're obviously all hockey fanatics to a certain degree. But if it's not you guys when you were younger, you would have known friends probably who had maybe a little bit more of a penchant. And look, I know I'm not the norm. I know that. Like, if you ask me who won the Calder Rookie of the Year, which is 91 names since 1933 when Carl Voss won it, I can answer any year in 1 second or less. There isn't anybody else on the planet can do that. And I know who won every Stanley Cup every year since 1893 in 1 second or less. Like, it's a labor of love to delve into the history of the game and these great moments, players, games, occasions, historic, sometimes controversial, whatever. The Hall of Fame guys got announced today. These are the men that, and now women, who have made up the backbone of the game, going back to when the Hall of Fame inductees first started in 1945. So it's got a great, it's a sport with a really, really rich history. It's pure Canadiana.
That's right.
The sport started with Canadians taking it to another level in Montreal in 1875, and then when Lord Stanley donated the cup in 1892, and it was first won in 1893 and first competed for in 1894, and it just progressively and very fast, very quickly became an incredible competition trophy that drove so much of the early history of the game, which then began just feeding the next group of superstars, and that's perpetuated itself ever since the late 1890s and early 1900s. So I love that part of it. I know that's not for most people, but I'm as comfortable talking about that as I am Eddie Shore, Gordie Howe, Rocket Richard, Bobby Orr, Conor McDavid, or Alex Ovechkin. It's how far back you want to go. It doesn't matter to me. I'll sit down, drink 12 beers, and tell you all about them. It's no problem.
I love it.
Awesome. Mike, you wanted to ask him? Mike, I thought you said you wanted to ask him.
Well, no, I just I mean, we're going to try to stump you a little later.
That's a little later.
But so I understand you're from Manotick. Is that correct?
I grew up. I was born in Montreal.
Right. But
I lived my first 7 years in the province of Quebec, and then I moved up to a rural road called the First Line in what was then Rideau Township, is now Rideau Ward, about 25 miles south of Ottawa. And that's where I grew up. And that's just outside, between two towns, Manotick being one. So I don't know if you know of Manotick, but Manotick being one and the other being Kars, Kars. I started playing minor hockey in 1967 in another village called Osgoode, Osgoode, and I actually ended up living there for almost 25 years. But I grew up on the First Line. We had the frozen fields. My Osgoode Rideau minor hockey is where I started playing. My son played there. I coached him every game he played, every game from age 5 to 18. I coached my son. I'm very proud of that. Crazy. We had an absolutely so much fun. He just got engaged on the weekend. So, just to put some context on where his life is now, and just how we look back even on what he did. And he's a big fan as well, and he's got a brilliant mind. He just didn't, thankfully, didn't jump in following me, because it's not for everybody. I've had a lot of lean years, but I've had a lot of great years too, and it's I started doing TV in Montreal in 1984 with Dick Irvin. That's 41 years. It's hard to believe, but I've done a lot. I've been on Hockey Night in Canada. I've been on every major radio, TV show in Canada at some point or another, including the national news. You name it, I've done it. And it's been a hell of a ride, man. It's been a hell of a ride.
That's amazing.
Speaking of Hockey Night in Canada,
yep.
Grapes just retired.
Yeah, I was going to ask him at the end. You heard about what's going on with Grapes. I know he means a lot to you.
Yeah.
What do you think, man? What do you think?
Well,
I think that was
you may or may not know, he very quickly rectified that and says he's not retiring.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Just retiring the podcast?
He says that him and Tim misspoke, and they didn't misspeak so much as that people just interpreted it incorrectly, and that he intends to come back and at least do some next year. But boy, his voice sounded, and I can't say I've listened to all 312 of them, but I've probably listened to half of them. And in each year's gone by, his voice has gotten weaker, which is understandable at 91. But he says that he intends to do some next year. But he is a very, I have not had the chance to talk to him since before COVID. So, and I never got a chance to actually talk to him post the incident in that November of 2019. But Prior to that, my relationship with him goes back to 1982, the Canadian Collegiate Hockey Championships. I was the MC. He was the guest. Him and Ron Ellis, the late Ron Ellis, were the celebrity guests both on the ice and off. Doug Orr, Bobby's younger brother, who I was working for at the time, is the guy who got me the gig. And that's when I met Grapes. And it started a great friendship because we have some close mutual friends. Some have passed, many in fact, but a couple haven't still, like Brian Kilray. Him and Grapes are really close, and Brian's a really, really, really close friend of mine. I love him like an uncle. So, yeah, I'm very fond of Grapes, and it does sound like that whole thing was misunderstood. He will be back.
I'm happy to hear it.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Hear
My God, you better post this right away because I want everybody to know. Dude, I love Grapes. I think what happened to him was a big sham. And you know what? I hate that we live in a world where we can't say what we want because people get so offended so quickly nowadays and they cancel this. And you know what? Shut up and the hell with everybody. Just be happy.
Well,
man.
they can't cancel Puck Nation, right?
That's right.
No, I'm
Can't
in my
do that.
house. I dare them. I dare you to come cancel me in my house. So anyway, whatever. Liam,
Not yet, at least. I don't know.
Not today. Not today. What stat did Liam Maguire say? Huh? What? Like, what the hell? Like, is there a stat that like you're like, no, that can't be?
Well, here's the thing, right? I get asked that all the time, and here's the thing. There's trivia, and then there's statistics. And when you start asking questions that are based on stats that have no real historical context in the game per se, or you're taking a stat and turning it into a question, that's not really the nature of what I've tried to do over my life. The cell phones becoming a big thing 10, 12 years ago has been a game changer for me. Like I used to be able to stand up and people would say, who won the cup in 1924? If I said the Montreal Canadiens, they would go, wow, how can you possibly know that? Well, now you can go on your phone and get that in 2 seconds. So
Exactly.
now I have to get people now when I start my gigs and they're pure hockey and if I'm hired to do pure NHL trivia, then I'll get people to go on their phones and I'll say, look, let's say hypothetically, which I just did last Thursday night, okay? I got 5 people in the group. One guy got Stanley Cup winners. One guy got Calder Trophy. One guy got Conn Smythe. One guy got Norris. And one guy got, I picked the NHL penalty minute leaders, career penalty minute leaders.
Wow.
I said, go with the top 10. So I said, ask me any one of them. And I went up and down the line and only do it for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't miss. And I get them all in 1 second. So then I've established that I've got the better memory than anybody breathing that they've ever met. And we can move on from there and get on with the rest of the evening as to what history would they like to talk about, something they heard in the past, saw in the past, or know in the past. But when you get into the stats and people are using them as trivia questions, I got no shot. I've got zero chance. So it's a bit of a fine line, but for the most part, given that I've done 5,000 appearances plus, it's really, really, really worked out well for the most part. There's a few hiccups. I don't get them all. I never have professed to do that. I've made 2 claims in my professional life. One, I can answer 90% of all NHL trivia questions that are asked of me. 90%. 2, there isn't anybody drawing a breath on the planet Earth that's sitting down across from me and beating me one-on-one. Nobody.
That's not going to happen.
Those are the 2 claims I made.
That's awesome.
What is your
Crazy.
favorite piece of history of the National Hockey?
The Montreal
Well, I
Canadiens.
can tell you.
As I see the CH that you're wearing, I'm like,
Well, yeah, I mean they've obviously got tons. As does the banner in behind you with the Leafs.
Yeah.
I mean their history is pretty rich as well up until '67, and you can't take away what they did in the '40s and '60s. I mean those Conn Smythe led teams not so much the 60s. He was sliding out of it. His son Stafford and Ballard and Bassett were taking over, but Conn Smythe's fingerprints were all over those 62, 3 and 4 rosters, and even the 67, which was kind of a miracle cup, but at the same time, the old brigade got it done, right? I mean, they were the oldest team to win the Stanley Cup until the 2002 Red Wings. So they deserved it at the end of the day. I was just a young boy watching it, but that Toronto team, if you had said it at that time, they'd never win another one, right? Till today, you never would have believed it. But I did a show one time, and a woman phoned in, a radio show. It was here in Ottawa. It's on radio station CFRA. It's pretty well-known AM station, and they had a number of, two in particular, really well-known talk show guests. Hal Anthony, the late Hal Anthony, who their newsroom is named after, and Lowell Green, who's still alive, but he's off the air now. He's well into his 80s. And I used to do their shows. Actually, it was Hal Anthony who brought me on the first time and paid me, and then Lowell Green took over. But I was doing a Lowell show, and a lady phoned in. She was older, and said, "What's the only time three brothers played on a Stanley Cup winning team?" And I said, "Well, it's never happened." And she said, "Yes, it has." I went, "Oh, is this a trick question?" "No, it's not." And then I went, "Okay, let me clarify. It has never happened in the NHL." She said, "Okay, you're right there." I said, "All right, so we're talking pre-NHL." She said, "Yes." But I said, "Ma'am, I have no idea." So she got me cold, and she said it was the Gilmore brothers on the Ottawa Silver 7 in 1903, Dave, Sudi, and Bill. And I said, "How? This is in the 80s. There's no internet. There's no, there's no way to look this up in 10 seconds. So, and you'd probably be hard pressed to even look it up today." But anyway, I said, "Ma'am, how could you possibly know that?" And she said, "Bill was my grandfather."
I was going to say a husband or something. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Unbelievable. I still call it the greatest question I was ever asked. That's pure trivia. Of course, I went home. I researched the hell out of it. And years later, probably almost 20 years later, I was doing another show in Ottawa, and a guy phoned in. He was in probably his early 40s, and we talked, and he said, "Hey, do you remember a question you were asked years ago?" And he recounted this question. I said, "Oh my God, how could I possibly forget?" He said, "That was my mother." And I said, "Geez, are you kidding me? I like that. How do you beat that? How do you beat that? You can't beat that." The one I get asked the most is the 3 goals. Bill Mosienko. Bill Mosienko's 3 goals in 21 seconds, March 23rd, 52, 6:09, 6:20, 6:30, the third period. Final score 7-6. The goaltender was Lauren Anderson from Renfrew, Ontario. The player who got the winning goal for Chicago was Sid Finney. He was from Ireland, where my late father was from as well, so that's an interesting connection. Gus Bodner assisted all 3, so he had the fastest hat trick. The goal judge in that end was Arthur Reichart. The defenseman he went around was a rookie defenseman named High Fuller on all 3 goals. And that's the one I get asked the most. But then the rest of the story is Billy. Two things. Bill's first game in the NHL 10 years earlier, he scored 2 goals in 21 seconds in his very first NHL game. And 10 and a half years later, he breaks the record and scores 3 in 21. He shattered the record at that time because Bellow, who's in second place, did it 3 years after Mosienko. Hold on now. Yeah, 3 years. And that was in 55, November 55. And all the Bellows were on the power play, and that's what forced the rule change where the player could come out of the penalty box on a power play goal. Anyways, I digress. But those are some of the, one that would be my favorite with the 3 brothers, the one I get asked the most. And then the rest is really just personal preferences, because I'll tell you, I've worked in every city in Canada, and I'm the gunslinger coming in every time, believe me. And there's always, when word's out that I'm coming, there's usually 8 or 10 guys lined up, and I try and let them down lightly so no one goes home too crushed. And then once we establish that, I'm here to entertain, but make no mistake about it, you may get me a few times, but ain't anybody getting down across from me one-on-one and beating me. That's not going to happen till I go to the ground.
That's for sure. We have a couple of friends that we told us that, I think we're going to have Liam Maguire on or whatever. And my friend Shane from a pizzeria that we go here is a big hockey fan. He's like, dude, he goes, you got to stump him. You got to stump him. You got to ask him this one question. You got to whatever. I said, okay, I'm going to look up some stuff and I'm going to ask him a question right at the end, because it's one of those 2-goal things that you just said, but it's got nothing to do with the NHL. Well, maybe WA, whatever. We'll see. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. Today's game. Everybody says, because everybody gets these easy points. It touches them, it's an assist and whatever. I get it. The secondary assist and all that. It's all cool, whatever. Do you think today's teams and years ago's teams, right? Obviously, the game has changed, the red line and everything. I get it. Should they have restarted all that, not just the stats, but how can I put this? When they say, the COVID Cup, that shouldn't have counted or whatever. Should they have, before red line, after red line stats and, because that's history, right? At the end of the day, that goes down in history. Like the Canadians won, but they won all those cups and there was a red line. It's a different game. We say it all the time on the show. Jacques Lemaire started using that red line as a defenseman, right? Just like the Russians did, right? But it's true, right? And now that these kids play without a red line, it's so much different. Should they have drawn a line right between and say, you know what? These stats and this history is before red line. This is after red line.
So post and pre?
Yeah, post and pre and post.
Exactly. There was no red line the first 25 years of the NHL.
That's right. That's right.
All those teams that won the Stanley Cup from the Toronto Arenas in 1918 up until the Detroit Red Wings in 43 all played without a red line. And I mean, once you go back prior to 1912, there was no blue lines. So, you really, so like Frank McGee scored 14 goals in one Stanley Cup game. That's the all-time record. Well, who could ever possibly, people are, I think, aware to a certain degree that was then and this is now. But when the NHL was formed, the Windsor Hotel in Montreal in 1917, up until today, the way I personally have always looked at it, when you achieve whatever the number is, like when Rocket Richard broke Joe Malone's record for most goals in a season, he played more than double the games. So, I mean, if Joe Malone plays an 82-game schedule in 1918, he scores 120 goals. Oh, yeah. It's all relative. I have no problem with it. I don't think you can take the NHL guide and record book or the history of it and start dissecting it, because the changes in some cases were so radical. Even look at, right, like Ovi's got 27 overtime goals. Wayne scored 2, like regular season overtime goals. It's just, it is what it is. He's at 897. He's got the most. Yeah, he did it under different rules. Wayne got to 894, and he did it different rules that Gordie Howe scored 801 in. So it is what it is. I've got no grudges to bear, and I don't think there's anything necessary to say. All I do say in that regard is that when people compare, the mistake they make is, if you want to drop Alex Ovechkin, say, in a conversation against Gordie Howe, because Gordie Howe was a power forward of unparalleled, then you have to have Ovechkin born in 1928 when Gordie was. Don't take Alex Ovechkin born in the 80s, in 85, and say that's the same guy as 1928. So the first thing you do is you measure against your peers. Where do you stand there if you're talking individuals? It doesn't matter if you're talking teams. You measure against your peers, and then you have to sit down. Let's just say, hypothetically, it was the 4 of us. We'd find a nice watering hole somewhere. We'd order some pizza, get some pints, and we'd start talking about the history of the Ottawa Senators in the early 1920s, the Detroit Red Wings in the early 50s, the Toronto Maple Leafs in the late 40s. Of course, the Habs with 5 in a row, the Leafs again, the Habs, the Oilers, the Islanders, what have you. Now Tampa and Florida, whatever, Chicago, their run, Detroit, their run, whatever. You sit down, drink some pints, hash it out. Because you know what? At the end of the day, when all 4 of us walked out of there, nobody is definitively right. This is all pure opinion.
You see, Mike, remember the argument? What argument? Remember the debate you had with your buddy?
Yeah,
you know, these guys and the goalies are this and the sticks are that. Shut up. It's all relative, man.
It is
it's
all relative.
It's all relative.
It's all relative, man. You take some guys back. I mean, no one was slapping a puck before Boom Boom Shafrio.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. The curve stick and the whole thing. Remember, Mike? Remember the debate we were having? It's, you know, that's why you can't say, oh, you know, I'd like to see Gretzky play today. Shut up. You know, I'd like to see, I don't know, I'd like to see Ovechkin play then. You know what I mean? With the Broad Street Bullies and say, hi, hello, you know, these are my elbows. You know what I mean? Like, come on. It's all relative, man. Come on, give me a break.
No, it's
they cut their own swath, you know. I mean, they made 3 finals. They won 2 consecutive cups, and then they were right back in the finals 4 years later, right, in 1980, and then right back again 5 years later, and then 2 years later. I mean, you know, a lot of different players, but that Broad Street Bully team, which really turned in 73 and then became the entity they were in 74. That hockey allowed for that to happen, and it forced every other team to load up, and it was one hell of a violent era. I can tell you, I enjoyed every second of it, but I know there's a lot of bleeding heart left wingers that look back on it and cry like stuck pigs. I mean, what the hell are you supposed to do? You're supposed to be a revisionist? I mean, it's 50 years ago. You had to have guts to put a sweater on. It's just the way it was. There was no passengers. You could not be a passenger in the NHL in the 1970s. Because your own team would run you out of Dodge. So, and they just happen to be the most ferocious, led by that quartet. I mean, if you think about it, after Schultz, DuPont, Kelly, and Selesky, like Dorney or the Watsons are getting the 5th or 6th toughest guy. No other team had 5 or 6. It wasn't until the Bruins really loaded up.
Maybe the Montreal Canadiens were the closest.
Yeah, the Canadians and the Bruins could match up, but it took a few years before they got there. And the Flyers earned everything they got.
Yeah. Listen, I was a kid. I remember watching the games with my dad when the Russians came over. They're leaving. The Russians are leaving. The Russians are leaving.
They're going home.
They're going home. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? How do you just
January 11th, 76. There's a big documentary coming up next year, the 50th anniversary of it. I've seen the trailer. It's going to be spectacular because obviously most of those guys are still alive. Unfortunately, a few have passed, including a couple just recently. But there's a ton of those guys are still alive, actually on both teams. And you're not going to get a lot of favorable comments from the Russians. But the Flyers are going to eat this up. And I've seen the trail. I work in Philly every March for the Flyer alumni. I am seeing it.
You were with
Brian. We had Brian Prop on last week. Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah. Exactly.
What a nice man. We had him on last week. What a nice man. That's great. Well,
Listen, Dion is in that too.
Yeah, that's right. He's part of that too. That's right. Liam, before we go, like I said, I have a couple of little questions. I want to ask you one question, then I have a little game. Not a game, but I want to mention a couple of names to you because I know what they mean to you, and I want to know what you're thinking now. I have a question for you that I told Shane I was going to do, and I was going to try to stump you. And I don't know if this is actually an NHL, but I always wanted to know, ever since I was a kid, and I'm not even joking, this is the truth. I wanted to know who has the fastest 2 goals on 2 different goalies. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
So he scored on a goalie, and then for whatever reason, that goalie got pulled.
Yeah.
Never heard it. Never heard it. Wouldn't even.
Shane, if you're listening, I did it. Okay. I don't like the thing is because I don't know if it happened. It's not in the NHL. It's a guy named Dennis Sawchuk. Okay, and it happened in 1977, and he scored the first one on Peter McDuff, and then the second one on Gary Innes 2 minutes later. And I always said, I'm like, who has that record? And I always wanted to know about that. And I'm like, I gotta ask him, but I don't think it happened in the NHL. I think it was the WHA. Could it be?
Yes, those are WHA names. They all had a smattering of NHL play. So
Yeah.
I'm unfamiliar with that as a stat. I've
As a
never seen
stat,
it
exactly.
written down as a record. Is how do you know this is the record?
I checked it out. I actually did some research. I said, I looked fastest 2 goals in NHL history, and that came up. And I'm like, but I never heard of Dennis Sawchuk, and especially in 1977, I would have known, right? I'm like, I've never heard of that. So
1977. Yeah, because that was
that was 2 years
that was
before they came in, right? That was 2 years
the
before
WHA was 72 to 79. So
yeah.
I'm not sure if that was if those guys did this, if this happened in the NHL, or what was the other goalie's name? McDuff and
Innes, Gary Innes.
Gary Innes. Well, it could have been the NHL. I mean, they were in the NHL.
Yeah.
That could have possibly, but McDuff and Innes. I'm not.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think
I
so.
don't think so either. But I don't know WHA history, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying because they said it was.
I'm interested to know how that was positioned online, where it stated that was a record. I find that very interesting because I'll tell you why.
I'm going to look it up.
The very first night in the NHL in history, there were 2 games, okay? And Toronto and Montreal, which was the Canadiens, and the Montreal Wanderers and the Ottawa Senators. And in the Toronto game, they used 2 goalies. And there were a lot of goals scored. I'll tell you what, just for fun, are you telling me that the record that you've been told it's 2 minutes on the nose?
No, it's 6 seconds.
Oh, 6 seconds. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
6 seconds.
6 seconds. So they scored, a goalie came in, and then 6 seconds later they got the
I'll
second.
read it to you right now. It says the record for the fastest 2 goals scored by one player against 2 different goalies in the NHL history stands at 6 seconds. The incredible feat was achieved by Dennis Sawchuk, like I said to you, and he netted back-to-back goals in just 6 seconds on December 30th, 1977, when the Edmonton Oilers faced the WHA Cincinnati Racers. And he beat Peter McDuff and Gary Innes.
So
that's what it says.
So that's not an NHL record.
That's an NHL, but because it states that it's an NHL record. That's why I wanted to ask you just to, because I bet you know more than this thing, you know.
Yeah, obviously Edmonton wasn't in there in 77,
Exactly.
so that's just a misprint there or whatever. But anyways, hey, there you go. That's a cool hockey anecdote. That's an anecdote for sure.
Yeah, I always wanted to know that.
I got one.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so this was given to me by a good friend of the show named Frank. And he was present at this particular game. So the last time that Guy Lafleur scored 50 goals in his career, what was special about when he scored number 50 of that year, that game? What was special about that goal, and who was it against?
Well, it was 1980. What was special about it?
It was his goal number. It wasn't like the last goal of the season per se, but it was goal number 50, and it was the last time he ever scored 50.
Right.
And there was something unique about that particular goal that night, and who was it against?
I hope you have the answer to that, Mike, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
I do.
Is the uniqueness got anything to do with the goaltender he scored on?
No.
Okay.
It's the circumstances of the goal. Let's put it that way.
Circumstances of the goal. Okay, it wasn't a penalty shot. First of all, I don't remember that particular game in 79-80. That was the year of his last 50-goal season. See, the thing is, he scored 3 times on Denny Herron, and once in Kansas City and once with Pittsburgh. It's funny because I think Gary Innes, in the goalie that you just mentioned, I think he had a 50-goal season against his 50th against him one year as well,
Wow.
if I'm not mistaken. Michel Plas. But in terms of the goal itself, I do not remember what was unique about it. I don't.
So
What is it, Mike?
It was against the Detroit Red Wings at Joe Louis Arena. And
Yeah.
the final score of that game was 7-2 Montreal. And his 50th goal had ripped through the net, and they continued play and came back after realizing it and credited him for the goal later.
Holy shit. And Frank was at the game?
And Frank was at that game at Joe Louis Arena in Detroit that night.
And it went through the net.
That's crazy.
Yes, and they brought the goal back after realizing what had happened.
stop
The play
and bring it back.
continued, and that was
Holy
the last
That was his
time
50th?
he had scored his fifth. It was his 50th that night.
Holy shit. Never heard of that, Mike.
That was
I never heard that.
79-80 for sure. He scored his first one in 74-75. I do not recall that happening, and there have been players that shot the puck through the net. That had happened several times in NHL history. A couple that I remember watching on TV, even back in that era, but they never got credited with the goal because there was no video review.
Yeah.
So I find it very interesting. Again, another one that's very interesting. I'd love to know how that got overturned and he got awarded the goal. But no, I have no memory of that whatsoever.
Wow. Liam, before we let you
I
go.
have a question, though.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Let me get my question.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
All right. So, who is the only player in the NHL history to win the Stanley Cup before playing his first regular season NHL game?
I said something and I was wrong. I said Ken Dryden and that wasn't right.
Correct.
No. So give me that again. He won the cup.
So he won a cup before playing his first regular season NHL game.
So that means he came in the playoffs. Won a cup. What the hell? And it's not Ken Dryden.
Ken Dryden had played 6 games.
Yeah. No, I remember he won all 6 as well. I think his goals against is 1.65. Like 20 games in the playoffs. No, definitely not Ken. But there's a lot of great possibilities here. Let me think for a second. Won a Stanley Cup. Hadn't played. I'm gonna need the year. There's too many.
1955.
1955. So he won a cup with Detroit and then played a regular season game the next year.
He went on to have 15 seasons.
Okay. In Detroit? Larry Hillman?
Spot on.
Who?
Larry Hillman.
Okay. Yeah.
That's impressive.
That's crazy. Dude, he won a cup.
I needed the year, though. I needed the year, and
the fact that you were able to do that is still impressive.
Incredible. That's
insane.
Incredible. Wow. Insane. So you see?
That's awesome, Liam.
Before we let you go, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. Before we let you go, I'm going to mention 4 names to you, and I just want to know what you think about them, okay?
Yeah.
Well, the first one we already mentioned before, Don Cherry. I know, grapes, what he means to you, whatever, okay? So we'll skip that one. Guy Lafleur.
Flower. I grew up with him. So when he started in the NHL, I was 12 years old. At very formative age to watch him play. And when he actually didn't play badly the first month, but they were defending Stanley Cup champs and they came out of the gate kind of flat. Beliveau had left. Fergie had left. Yeah. Al McNeil got demoted. We had a new coach in Scotty Bowman, and the team never really gelled, even with Dryden, who had done all the heroics in 71. So took Flower a couple of years. We all know the history of what he did after. Yep. Got married in 74, new contract, took the helmet off, and the rest of his playing career is history. But years later, in the mid-'80s, when he retired the first time, I met him, and we became acquaintances. And then years later, we became pretty good friends. And we worked many times together. He picked me up in his helicopter one time
Oh, wow. Wow.
flew me to Shawville to see a dying man. It was his dying request was to meet Guy Lafleur. I helped set it up, and Guy said, I'll fly up there in a helicopter. I'll pick you up along the way, and he did. That's probably my highlight of many with him. But I can tell you right now that I was in the Forum the night he scored his greatest goal and when he played his greatest game, Game 7 against Boston, Thursday night, May 10th, 79. And I was there with my late father. And when Lafleur scored with $1.26 to go there on that power play for too many men on the ice, that railing shook. I never heard a building like that, never felt a building like that. Like Dick Irvin always said, the greatest player I ever saw was Rocket Richard. The greatest player I ever broadcast was Guy Lafleur. And the greatest I ever saw was Guy Lafleur in person. I never saw anybody live like Guy in his prime. And I lived at the Forum in those days. So became a great friend, and we lost him a couple of years ago. Yeah. Him and Bossy dying 6 days apart. It still blows me away, but just crazy stuff. But I love the man, and we chatted not too long before he passed. I cherish that as well. And it's sad, but he was just absolutely incredible player and a better man.
Awesome. I met him a couple of times in my life. He was always a gentleman to me. I met him actually at his restaurant bar that he had here in Montreal, and he was a gentleman. He actually signed an autograph for me, which was great. It's funny you mentioned Mike Bossy. I know I'm a big Leafs fan, but Mike Bossy's always been my favorite player. Right, as you can see right behind Yanni, that's a poster that he signed to me right before passed away. 6 days apart. Incredible. Yeah. Two of the greatest that ever played 6 days apart. Yeah. Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. Well, another guy that I consider an acquaintance and a friend to this day. And I remember hearing about him in the early 70s when he had the 398 goal season. And cause I'm only 2 years older, and we were hearing about this kid in sort of Midwestern Ontario. Of course, nobody that I knew. I never got a chance. Obviously, I was older anyway, but I didn't play at his level. But then the Quebec Pee Wee tourney, what he did there. And then when he went to junior, though, and that 1 year with the Sioux, and they came in and played the 67s, I remember going to the game with my good friend Gordy Paul. I got good seats, and I said, let's see what this kid's all about. And he was just a will-o'-the-wisp out there. You couldn't hit him. And it's just he just created something every shift. It was unbelievable to watch. And he created such a firestorm in what was then the OHA, later renamed the OHL. Every rink he went in, they took their top superstar and had Wayne do a penalty shot competition against him during periods. So in Ottawa, that was Bobby Smith. Like in London, it was Dino Ciccarelli and so on, Yeah. And it was just incredible stuff how he would do that. He was 16 years old, 16. And then we all know how his career went, and everyone said the WHA will kill him. He was Rookie of the Year, over 100 points. The NHL will kill him, 137 points in his first year. He'll never win a Stanley Cup. He won 4. He'll never win a Conn Smythe, 1, 2. All the rest that he did is history. I met him when I was a guy that broke the stat publicly. As his career was winding down, I was on tour for Labatt's, crisscrossing Canada in 98, 99. I was in 26 cities in 26 weeks. And one of the guys on our crew was Glenn Gretzky, his youngest brother. So I was on stage one night, and somebody asked, what's one of the best Wayne Gretzky stats you know? And I said, easy, the 1851. They said, what's that? I said, well, the time of his first goal in the NHL was the 1851 mark of the third period, October 14th, 1979, against the Vancouver Canucks. Goaltender Glenn Hanlon, assisted by Brett Callaghan and Blair McDonald. And I said 10 years and 1 day later, October 15, 1989, Wayne became the all-time points leader in the NHL, passing Gordie Howe, playing for LA against his old team Edmonton with career point number 1,851. The same number as the time of his first goal. So I brought that stat out, and Glenn phoned his dad. His dad didn't believe it. Walter hadn't had the stroke yet, so he was still in pretty good shape. And Walter phoned Wayne. Wayne said he wanted to meet me, so we arranged to meet in Buffalo. And that was the start of my introduction to Wayne, and then he ended up writing the foreword to my third book. I mean, my first book foreword was written by Dick Irvin, my second by Bobby Orr, my third by Wayne Gretzky, and my fourth by Bob Costas. So I've been very, very fortunate. And Wayne's the greatest offensive force in sports, and Ovi may have passed him in goals. We all know no one's gonna come close to 1,963 assists or 2,857 points. So Wayne's the man, and he's a friend as well.
That's awesome. Last but not least, Conor McDavid. And today.
Yeah, I haven't met Conor yet. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him yet. I hope to rectify that sooner rather than later, possibly as early as next season if some things work out. But I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of guys that represent Canada and go as often as they do. And he's done it a bunch of times. Obviously, he's starting the World Junior, but a few other times as well. And I think I've never seen anybody like him. The closest I could say that I've seen like him is Bobby Orr. And Bob, that's two different positions. But I've never seen anybody like McDavid do what he does. I've never seen anybody at speed go laterally like that, be able to hang on to the puck and do the things he does. He's got all the ingredients. He doesn't have, like Wayne's pure offensive skill to create every shift was born out of different circumstances at the time. We talked about it at the start of the show, how when you're comparing, you can't really do that per se. But Conor McDavid's in a class of his own in terms of what his strengths are. And I just think we're so lucky to get a chance to watch this guy play. He's already got 8 100-point seasons. I mean, he's only chasing two guys, Wayne at 15 and Mario at 10. He's going to get to 10 at least, and probably more.
Easily,
and he may not get to Wayne, but that's 2 finals. He's got the Conn Smythe, all the stuff he's done. One of only 3 playoff years with 40-plus points. I mean, he's done some really unique things up there in that Wayne and Mario echelon. So I haven't had the chance to meet him, but I'm a massive fan. I was cheering like hell for Edmonton, believe me. I was cheering like hell for them. So they lost so much with Hyman going out, and when Nugent Hopkins was missing the game day skates, I thought he had probably a hell of a game 6, really. I think he just summoned every little bit of willpower he had. They just couldn't do it against that irresistible force, But I'm a huge McDavid fan, fellas. Big fan.
Great. Liam, I want to say thank you so much for doing this. And my friend Phil Bridges, we were just talking. I'm a musician. I did a few shows up in PEI a couple of weeks ago. And he heard about the podcast, and he's like, "Oh, I got a couple of guys." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, Liam and whatever." I said, "Dude, if you can set it up, why not?" And he did. And I want to say thank you to Phil. I know he's listening. Phil, thank you so much. Look, I told you we'd get him on, and I told you I'd try to stop him. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, man. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. It's such a pleasure to meet you, and success with your movie book about Goldie. And I hope it all works out, and I can't wait to see it if it does.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we'll go get some beers at some point, like we said.
Yeah, when you're in Montreal, that would be great. That would be great.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Have yourself a wonderful night. Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, boys. Good night.